today I want to talk about a pet peeve of living with diabetes. And this isn't going to be the type of pet peeve that you're accustomed to hear. That's the equivalent of saying, hey, I got to pay my rent and I'm going to go get a scratch off so now I can pay my rent. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And today I want to talk about a pet peeve of living with diabetes. And this isn't going to be the type of pet peeve that you're accustomed to hearing. You're probably thinking of how the other day, prime example, I was about to have a session with a patient, was all hyped up, ready to go, and the tubing of my pump caught the doorknob. I took one step too far, didn't feel any sort of initial tug because it was all in one fell swoop, and boom, there goes my site. Now I have to change my site. Now I have to make sure the new site is good. It was a fresh site, so it made it that much more disappointing. You know the drill. I'm not talking about a pet peeve like that. I'm talking about a pet peeve that is more of a thing that is self-inflicted by a person living with diabetes. And you might be guilty of this, you might not be, but I say this from a place of love before I say anything else. But I also say this as a practitioner in the diabetes space and also as a person living with diabetes. And that would be playing roulette with your doses. Thinking, what does that mean, Ben? I don't know if I understand. Roulette is that game. You can go to Vegas. I assume I've never been to Vegas, but you go to Vegas, you spin the wheel, you can pick red or black or a number. You're basically leaving your fate completely up to chance. You pick your number, let's say 37 red. I don't even know if that's a thing, but you get what I mean. And you put your money on that. And if it lands on 37 red, you're going to win a bunch. Maybe you pick red, and if it lands on red, you win. But if it lands on black, you completely lose. And you have no control over the situation. You just let it ride, you let it rip, and you hope it goes the way that you expect it to. There's a lot of people that I see who do this with their dosing and do this with their carb counting. They will get a meal. You get a meal. Let's say you go to dinner and you order something. You're like, hey, this looks really good. I'm really excited for this. I'm going to make up a meal now. Chicken Alfredo pasta with a Caesar side salad. And let's say there's also some breadsticks and everyone's splitting a pizza too. So you've got all this great food and you look at it and you don't even try to figure out what's in it. You just say, yep, this is 7 units. This will be good enough. Another example. Your blood sugar's 285. You know you're supposed to correct something, but you're not sure what. So, maybe you're on a pump, maybe you're not. But you just decide, you know what? 3.5 units will do the job. No math involved, no legwork involved, nothing. Just dial up, 3.5, boom, done. And hopefully it works. And there's really only 3 outcomes that can occur from a situation like this, right? Where you're guessing on your dose, or you're guessing on your correction, or you're guessing on whatever the diabetes situation might be. Your 3 outcomes are, number 1, you overdo it. And you overdo it by a lot. So your blood sugar now is crashing, you're having to correct it, and you're then likely admitting yourself to the blood sugar roller coaster. Not ideal. Option number 2, shoot. So now your blood sugar from wherever it is now going to go high, and you're going to have to correct it, and you're likely admitting yourself to the blood sugar roller coaster. First class, one-way ticket. The third outcome, and this is the least likely outcome out of everything, would be you nail it. You take the dose, you took that 3.5 on a whim, and it happened to be that your body needed 3.5 units, and you just nailed that dose. You knocked it out of the park and everything is magnifico. And if we were to put it on one of those pie chart things, right? Those fancy pie charts, it would more than likely be a teeny little sliver, like 1% of the pie would be your, hey, I nailed it. 49% would be I undershot and 49% would be I overshot. And the rest, maybe the 2%, you got it right. And a lot of people are living for that too. That's the equivalent of saying, hey, I got to pay my rent and I'm going to go get a scratch off and I'm going to hit the scratch off so now I can pay my rent. You wouldn't do that, would you? Probably not. Would be my guess. I sure as heck would hope not. And maybe you're super lucky and it happens to work out for you, but you more than likely for things that matter in your life wouldn't just hope that you're going to get it. You wouldn't go to a bingo hall saying, hey, my car payment's due. Let me go hopefully win in bingo. No, you're going to likely have a more responsible strategy for it. And so what I just don't understand is when people will tell me, well, yeah, I just dosed, or, I just rage bulletsed, or, oh, it looked like it was 6 units, so I took 6 units. Where are you coming to that conclusion? How is that helping you in managing your blood sugar better? And take a step back for a second. Let's say you have that, chicken Alfredo pasta meal I just described. And let's say you took 8 units and you happen to nail the dose. You got that 2% likely probability that you nailed the dose. Okay, amazing. You nailed it. But the problem is you have no idea how you nailed it. You just know you took a number and hoped you got it. So if I gave you that same meal tomorrow, would you be able to repeat the exact same thing and get the same result? The answer is probably not, because you don't have any idea how or why it happened. You just know that it happened. So my question to you that I want to ask you is, when you guess on a dose, when you guess on how many carbs are in something, when you guess on, oh, I guess I should eat 26 grams before I start this activity because I don't want to go low. Oh, what are you doing? How is that benefiting you for not just the short term, but the long term as well? Because I don't know about you, but I live in the mentality of I'd rather work smarter, not harder. Working smarter and harder is great too. But, I would rather work a little smarter and recognize, hey, if I'm going to go for a run and I know that my body needs 15 grams of carbs, I know that I can take that 15 and have a pretty predictable result within 85 to 90% knowledge of and certainty of knowing that my number is going to be fine. And there's going to be that outlier every now and then, but that's a probability I'm willing to accept. But what I don't understand is on the flip side that, well, I took 15 and it sounds like a good number, so it doesn't make any sense to me. And again, it can be you as well. But in diabetes land, I always see it as something where there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of science, and our bodies are obviously not perfect. But why do something if you can't repeat it and you can't use it for reference later on? If you're just completely guessing, it's not going to do anything. And I was talking with one of my friends who's actually someone who was on this podcast, and I think it was the first guest actually, was Rob. And we were talking about things and how sometimes showing up and doing the work and committing to doing something can be really difficult. And we were talking about it in the context of it can be with respect to self-development. It can be with respect to health. It can be with respect to anything. And I think what's really, really with that within the diabetes sphere is it's not always going to be easy. You might show up and you might be at a social event where there's a million things going on taking your attention. You've got a family member trying to tell you about their new job, and you've got someone else that's trying to tell you about how they're doing in school. And then someone else wants to show you their newest TikTok video. And then somebody else is really excited because they haven't seen you in 3 years and you're super excited to see them. And you're getting super distracted. You're over here saying, I've got to figure out my doses, but this person's talking to me that I'm going over here. Then I go on my way to the bathroom and I get intercepted by it. There's a lot going on. But what I think is really tricky about it is there's a lot going on, but it's more so putting that priority. You got to put that priority there, and you've got to put that priority into showing up and being willing to just do that little bit of work. Because when it comes to diabetes, and I tell this to all of our patients, especially when we're talking on the phone, a lot of times before a session, I'll tell people, hey, before they get started with us, look, our goal here as practitioners with our team is for you to do as little work as possible and get the maximum result as possible, because that's inherently what people want, right? People want to do as little as possible but get the best result possible. And in diabetes land, it's no different. If you're at a social gathering, the last thing you want to be doing is spending 35 minutes figuring out exactly how many carbs are in your food and what you need to dose. The goal should be, hey, I got my food. Let me figure out what's on the plate. Let me dial up. All right, cool. Let the insulin soak in a little bit and kick in a little bit, and I'm good. And it's that simple. So now you've spent 90 seconds, you didn't spend 90 minutes, and you're great. But I think the biggest challenge, and probably the biggest pet peeve I have here that I'm trying to emphasize, is it doesn't take that much effort, but it feels like a lot of times it's really easy to neglect just that teeny little bit of effort. And I'm guilty of it too at times. I'm not perfect myself. There are times where I'll get distracted or I'll be in the middle of something and I'll suddenly get pulled to the next thing and I won't have the time or bandwidth that I need to have to be able to make sure my blood sugars are on point. But having that desire to just do that little bit of work, to commit and say, hey, you know what? I am going to commit to not guessing on doses anymore. And I am going to show up every day and not guess to the point where I don't even think that guessing is a possibility, because there's no reason to guess. It takes me longer to guess than it does for me to go through my protocol and know exactly what to do. Boom, 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 boom. It would be pointless for me to guess. That's the point I want you to get to, because that's going to be the point where the long-term benefits are going to occur. And I know I keep saying pet peeve, pet peeve, pet peeve. It's something that's just obnoxious. It is. I think there's nothing, as I'm sure you can probably imagine from a practitioner perspective, that drives me more crazy than, hey, we addressed something. This is a real raw rant, right? We've addressed something, we've addressed this area of blood sugars, and then somebody says, yeah, I just guessed on what I did. What does that do? It's like you're taking a test in school and you're just filling in C on every single Scantron thing, hoping that some of the answers are C and you'll get some partial credit. There's no point. There's no utility. At least try. If you don't want to try, it's ultimately your prerogative, right? You don't have to try. You don't have to be putting yourself into that position. But what I also would not want is if you are someone who's choosing, hey, I'm going to guess, I'm okay with that, I'm not going to try, you also can't be the same person that's then whining about how blood sugars aren't doing what you want them to do because you're not putting in any effort into making them any better. You cannot say in one breath, oh man, my blood sugars are so hard to manage. Hey, did you guess on your dose? Yeah, I guess all the time. You can't have it both ways. And I think that's the biggest thing is I just want some ownership, right? I want to be able to have people say, and I want you to say to yourself and commit to yourself to say, hey, I am committed to doing the little things. And yes, it may take a little bit of time and it might take a little effort, but I'm committed to not guessing on my dose. If I guess on my dose, I know more than likely the result is not going to be great. Sure, I can recover quickly, but it's not a position I would want to voluntarily put myself in. And think about the short term, right? You guess on your dose, maybe it's an event, maybe it's a dinner, whatever. You guess on your dose or even snacking, right? Oh, I kept eating out of the bag and I didn't portion anything out. And I've done that plenty of times. So can definitely admit to that one as well. But then you're guessing on this dose and now your number's high for no reason. It's completely preventable. Now in the short term, you're feeling like absolute garbage, right? You're feeling like, well, this is fun. I'm either super high or I'm super low and it's interfering with whatever I need to do in the rest of my life, whether that's working, whether that's hanging out with people, whether that's being present. Maybe it's just sitting and staring at a wall and relaxing, but you are unable to do that to the same degree because you put your blood sugar into a different spot than it would normally be and it's out of range. But then the long-term ramifications, right? If you take every single instance in which you are sitting there guessing on your dose, you're now compounding that. Those effects are cumulative, for better or for worse. We're being real with diabetes here. Those effects are cumulative over time. That will add up over time. If you continually guess on your dose, 4, 5, 6, 7 times per week, once a day, for example, on average, and your blood sugar goes on a roller coaster as a result over 5, 6, 10, 12, 15 years, that's not going to be great for your body. And the worst part is the manner in which it's self-inflicted. And another example I can think of this would be, I remember I was in grad school and I like training. I like working out. I'm all about flexibility and mobility and movement. And I remember thinking at one point, there was a stretch I really didn't enjoy doing it because my body did not move very well at all. And it involved, loosening my hip. My hip was impinged because I pitched all through high school and into college. The tricky part with it was this stretch was extremely uncomfortable. It was absolutely terrible. It involved tying one of those pull-up assistance bands around a stationary platform. So it could be like a pole. It could be one of the rigs where you can hang a TRX, whatever. And I had to basically, effectively create space within the joint and rock it back and forth. And it was really annoying to set up, if I'm being fully honest, because if someone was in the space I needed, I couldn't use it. So it was annoying to set up, but it was also annoying because it wasn't comfortable. It didn't feel good. And as a result of that, what did I do? I tried to avoid it. And then I thought about it and it really hit me one day. I was stretching, doing something else, and I was sitting in the gym and I'm thinking, this is a movement that probably takes 1 minute of my day. One single minute, which there's a lot of minutes in every day. I believe there's 1,440. So 1 out of 1,440. I don't know the fraction off the top of my head, but that is like 0.0% of the day or something obnoxiously small. And if I can't commit to that small little increment for something so minute, that's going to be cumulative over time. What's going to happen in 5 years from now? Because I chose not to do that movement. And I didn't just choose to not do it. I actively chose to not do this thing. What's going to happen potentially to my hip? Is my hip going to feel any better? Probably not. Is my hip going to feel worse? Probably yes. And something so small, it's that extra minute. Does that extra minute in the grand scheme of things really matter that much in the moment itself? I mean, sure, if I was running late to class and I needed that extra minute to be able to run into the building and find my seat or whatever. Sure, maybe it mattered in that case. But does it really matter that much in the grand scheme of things back then? No. Would it really matter that much now? Probably not, unless that minute is the difference between getting into the airport and getting on a flight or the door closing. Like it's less likely for it to mean a really, really great deal. And I want you to think about the same thing with your blood sugars because it's very similar, right? It's a cumulative effect of something so small. You hear all of the motivation motivational speeches, just 1% better every day. It turns into 30% better per year because it's a compounding effect. That shit's true. It's absolutely true. You take that little teeny thing that you are doing, you're taking that extra minute every day and you are investing that minute into your diabetes account. And it is compounding every single day, whether you are choosing to invest it into better blood sugars or worse blood sugars. And that extra little teeny tidbit of time for you to commit to yourself to not guess on your dose is going to have rippling, massive potential effects for better or for worse years down the road over something so small, so minute, yet so important at the same time. And also just factor in the idea that it also is going to impact your next 3-4 hours over such a small little decision. Not to say if you mess up your dose, you're, doomed. But if you just guess on your dose, sure, it's easier right then. But in 3 hours, if you feel nauseous because you're 374 or you feel super low and you're having to eat a ton of food that you didn't want because you're 45, that's not going to help either, right? So I just want you to kind of think about it from that perspective. And I'm not here, if you're somebody who's guilty of doing this, I'm not here to, rip you a new one, or I'm not here to tell you how terrible you're doing and how you're under my skin or anything. That's ultimately up to you. It's your diabetes, it's your body, it's your life. You get to choose what you want to do every single day. But I want to just pose this as a thought experiment to you. Look, it's a tiny little decision. If you guess on your correction, or if you guess on your mealtime dose, or you guess on your preparation for exercise, but think about how many other things it impacts, not just that moment, but the next few hours, then days, weeks, months, years later, decades later. That cumulative effect is so big. And wouldn't it be so much easier to just say, hey, I'm going to focus a little bit harder, figure out what is going to work for me. And now I'm at the point where I can just unconsciously do exactly what needs to be done. I can show up to an event and know that there's a big meal coming, and I don't even have to think about what I'm doing. I know what to dose. I know how to figure it out. I know how to account for the fat and the protein. I know how to do all of these things and keep my blood sugar in as great a spot as possible. And sure, I'm not going to be perfect, but 90% of the time, I know there's a level of predictability that I can attain. That is the important thing. And that is when you know you are winning when it comes to your diabetes, because you are not guessing. There is no guessing. There's always going to be a cause and effect. And again, within reason, that your numbers are on point. And that's why we stress with our patients so hardcore. Everything does happen for a reason. If your blood sugar goes high, there's likely a reason why it happened. Every now and then, there's no legitimate reason. And it just was, hey, this happened and we don't have any clue. But more than 90% of the time, we know something caused this. Let's figure out what. So if you can eliminate some of that, especially the ones that you can choose actively to make sure do not happen, your life's only going to be that much easier. So don't make life any harder than it has to be. Diabetes can be challenging as it is. So my real challenge for you is, will you commit to yourself, hey, I am not going to guess on my doses anymore? Or are you going to tell yourself, hey, you know what? I'm going to figure it out. I'm not only going to not guess, but I'm going to make sure I have a protocol and I have a sequence of, I'm going to go through it. Boom, 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 boom. And I know that I'm going to have pretty solid blood sugars. Or you're going to say, this is a cool thought experiment, but it's fine. I'll go roll the dice and aim for that 2% shot because I think it'll be good. Because every time I roll the dice, I'm going to roll snake eyes and it's going to be fantastic. Or I'm going to roll box cards and it's going to be fantastic. And I'm going to nail my blood sugars. I wouldn't bet on that strategy if I were you. But this is my real raw rant, my pet peeve, if you will. If you want more pet peeve type episodes or, actual pet peeves that are more traditional, for example, like the site getting pulled out by the doorknob pet peeve, or the Dexcom, waking you up at 2 a.m. pet peeve, definitely let me know. But I also want to know, and real talk, I want you to tag me on social media, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, wherever social media platform you are on. Tag me at manofzeal, MANOFTZEL. And I want to know, are you committing to not guess on your dose anymore? Let me know, because I am rooting for you actively to not be guessing on your dose. And if you are, and you're thinking, hey, I've got no clue, I just don't know what to do, this is super frustrating, I want my blood sugars to be good, but they're just not doing their job, definitely reach out. 1-649-3081. Reach out on Instagram, shoot me a DM. Reach out on TikTok, shoot me a DM. We want to make sure you are getting support and your blood sugars are doing amazing, so you are not living a life restricted by diabetes. So with that, I'm out. I'll catch you soon. Definitely looking forward to hearing how you are taking the diabetes bull by the horns. Let's do this, and I'll catch you later.